Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3T Path channel, and welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. And we're in this wonderful chapter where Krishna is talking about the mystic powers, the yogic superpowers. It's a very interesting theme that's always there in the spiritual yogic tradition. And it's just fascinating. In this chapter, it's one of the best resources for learning about the superpowers because it's Krishna explaining the 18 mystic powers, the 8 primary we did in the last class, and today we're going to do the 10 secondary yogic superpowers, the siddhis, they're called in Sanskrit. And of course, the Yoga Sutras, they talk about that in chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras. But the way Krishna explains here, it's very nice and organized. It's one of the best places where you can read about these yogic superpowers. Now, of course, if you want to watch all the previous classes in this Uddhava-gita course, make sure you become a member of this channel, and the instructions are here in the description of the video. And also check out Uddhava-gita.com, where you can have the whole course nicely organized so you don't get lost trying to watch all the classes. Okay. So here we are in the 11th Canto, 15th chapter, and starting here today with verses 6 and 7. So Krishna is going to start describing the 10 secondary yogic superpowers. Now we saw in the last class the 8 primary, which are kind of like very famous, the 8 primary. This list of 10 secondary, it's used here, but it's not so common. But the 8 primary is recognized as the special 8. But of course, if you look at Patanjali's Yoga Sutras again, there are many superpowers listed there which may not exactly be found here, and there's some here that might not be found there. So it's not, once it gets to the secondary level, still like super incredible, you'll see. But when it gets to the secondary level, it's not so universal, the concept of what, of how this list is composed. But this is Krishna saying, so that's all the authority we need. So here we go. The 10 secondary mystic perfections arising from the modes of nature are the powers of freeing oneself from hunger and thirst and other bodily disturbances, hearing and seeing things far away, moving the body at the speed of the mind, assuming any form one desires, entering the bodies of others, possessing other people, dying when one desires, witnessing the pastimes between the demigods and the celestial girls called apsaras, completely executing one's determination and giving orders whose fulfillment is unimpeded. Okay, so let's go through these again. Let's one by one. So the first one, being undisturbed by hunger and thirst, anurmi matvam. So this is interesting, being undisturbed by hunger and thirst. There was a case in India that became quite famous of this yogi who died, has since died. But he said that he spent 80 years without drinking or eating. And they put him in hospital and they tested him. He was like in a hospital room for 2 weeks under constant surveillance. Everything that came out of his body, they would look. Everything was like, it was a proper scientific experiment. And he really didn't eat or drink anything. And it was 2 weeks and it was fine, nothing changed. He was exactly the same person who came in and came out. So that's interesting because that is a superpower that we actually have a little bit of documentation of in this day and age. Again, he said he was just gifted because, as you can see in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali says, look, you can get these superpowers by attaining them through through the power of your mind, but you can also just get them. You can get them from herbs, he says, and you can get them from karma. You just get them. It's your chance. So you get them from birth, from karma, from herbs. So you can just get them. And this famous yogi in India, he said he got it from the local goddess, from Durga. I'm not sure, which goddess, but he just got this blessing. So that's it. So, okay, so the first one, being undisturbed by hunger and thirst. Okay, so next, which counts as 2, that's why we were counting, it came out as 9, but it's seeing things far away and hearing things far away. So seeing things far away, hearing things far away, the power to, of course, that's why, some people comment, which is interesting, is like these superpowers are certainly very impressive, and they would take, yogis would spend decades trying to attain these things. But like Patanjali says, you can get these things just out of karma, just out of birth. And of course, all of us, we all got this superpower. I mean, you guys are watching this class, and some of you are thousands and thousands of miles away from me, and you're hearing and seeing me. So this is a superpower. So we all got this superpower of television, and and hearing from far away. So we all got this superpower now. Not so impressive now, is it? Do note that Krishna started saying these are arising from the modes of nature. So these are just the ways of manipulating nature to get these powers. These aren't special gifts from God, like the 8 primary superpowers we spoke of in the last class. They were so disruptive. I mean, they're practically like godlike powers. So they would have to be given directly from God. Okay, so that's easy enough to understand. Very far away, hearing and seeing things. Now, mana java, moving the body at the speed of mind. So what does the speed of mind mean? It's an interesting concept. It's like, think of the city where you're at. Okay, so you think of this city. Now think of some other city, like Paris, if you're in Paris, Rome, New York. So your mind goes from Paris, Rome, New York. See that? So that speed, that's called the speed of mind. I can planet Earth, the sun, Mars. I can immediately think about these places, and that's the speed of mind. So my mind goes to these places. So then with this special power, though, you can go with your mind. So that would be very nice, right? So this is the power to you kind of teletransport yourself all over the place by the power of your mind. So mana java. And then this is a famous one. You see this one all the time, Kamarupa. Kamarupa comes up all the time in the stories. It seems like this was kind of a common one. It was this was a popular download, as it were, in the Mystic Power, app store. This was one that was downloaded a lot. Kama Rupam. So Kama, desire, just something you want to do. Rupa, form. So Kama Rupa is that power to shapeshift. It's the shape-shifting superpower. And you see that so much again. You see, of course, even in Greek times, if you look at the Greek the stories of the Greek gods, they all had Kamarupa. It's very central. It's a central theme. You could see Zeus Kamaruping into all these different forms, and all of them were like Kamaruping to fool people, to get new girlfriends and new boyfriends. They were to cheat, to steal, to fool people. So Kamaruping was very common. If you look at the Greek god, the demigod tradition. And of course, in the stories we have, it's all so much Kamarupa. It's very famous, for example, the Pandavas. The whole tragedy of the Pandavas starts when their father, Pandu, he shoots a deer who wasn't actually a deer. It was a yogi doing Kamarupa, having sex. Him and his wife had done Kamarupa to become like deer, and he shot the deer. But then, when he shot the deer, the Kamarupa was changed back, and he's like, oh my God, I just shot a yogi, a brahmana. It's terrible. So he was cursed. His whole life was ruined. The whole course of history was changed because of Kamarupa in that case, because he would never have shot, a brahmana, of course, but it was just a deer. So Kamarupa you'll get a lot of. Okay. Parakaya. This is super creepy, right? Parakaya praveshanam. So this is entering the bodies of others. It's very creepy. Okay, so it's kind of like a possession thing. You don't hear about this much, like it doesn't come up in the stories so much. But I have heard, I don't know, not something that I studied, but if you've heard of the Kama Sutras, the famous Kama Sutras, where you have all these, fantastic descriptions of incredible positions for sex, the Kamarupa. So they say that was written by a celibate brahmana, a celibate monk. It's like, how did he write that? Because he did that. He entered into the body of this king who was like a very lusty king with a huge harem. He was like super into sex, and so he was like very much focused on that. So he entered him, and then he saw like all these things, and he learned, and then he wrote, because he was good at writing and teaching things, and the king was good at sex, so he kind of possessed his body, got all that experience, and then like, okay, that's how they do it, but without ever having his body having sex. Anyway, it's super creepy, and you don't hear about it that much, but it's always mentioned there. So, and then in Yoga Sutras, it's also mentioned that you go in through the different channels, your consciousness. Anyway, very creepy. So it's kind of like possessing people. It's like a way to possess people. Okay, Kamarupa. Okay, now Swachanda. So Swachanda means that you can now. Swachanda mrityu. Which is like, why would you want to do that? Dying at your will. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that. So, very famous example of this, of course, is in the Mahabharata. And so in the Mahabharata, you have this very famous case of having this mystic power of Swachanda mrityu. So you have the famous case of Bhishma. So grandfather Bhishma, the very, the great elder of the Kurus, the grandfather of the Pandavas and of Dhritarashtra and his brother. So great, grandfather Bhishma, he had this special power. He had this Swachanda mrityu. So he would not die until he wanted to. And so he went to battle of Kurukshetra, and he is covered he's been shot at so much. He's covered with arrows. His whole body is like a little porcupine of arrows just popping through this whole body. And it's so many arrows. So then at the end of the battle, he hasn't died yet. And this is very famous. The Mahabharata, like a huge part of the Mahabharata is focused on this, because then after the battle of Kurukshetra, grandfather Bhishma is there, and he's very wise. He's a great yogi. He's a great devotee of Krishna. So grandfather Bhishma is absolutely covered head to toe in arrows sticking, traversing his body. He should have died. Why did he die? Because he had this special power, like he wouldn't die. So he's lying there, it says lying in a bed of arrows, because there's so many arrows sticking through him, and that his body wasn't actually touching the ground. So it was just arrows just going through his, so he was like lying on a bed of arrows. So it's very famous scene of grandfather Bhishma lying in a bed of arrows at the end of the Kurukshetra war, and the Pandavas are there and Krishna is there. And then they start, and he's very wise. So there's like a huge section of the Mahabharata where he's just like teaching the Pandavas. He's like sharing, he's teaching them about Dharma, and he's got Krishna there. And what he's doing is he wanted to wait for the right time to die. Because there's this mention in Bhagavad-gita that, you want to make sure the sun is traveling in this direction, and then it's the light, and it's more auspicious time to die. So he was waiting for that. So it's like he waiting for months. He was like waiting for the sun to to start traveling in the right direction, and then he did all that. with this power. Just lying there. But then at the right time, they had Krishna in front of me. That's like, okay, this is perfect now. It's perfect time. Krishna is right here. Okay, now I'm going to go. So it's very interesting because the time of death, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad-gita, chapter 8, beginning, you can see that it's very important. Antakale chamam. It's like, if your mind is fully focused on Krishna, Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, at the time of death, then you will attain his bhava, you will attain his nature. He says, of that there is no doubt. He's very, very, very emphatic about it. There will be no doubt you will attain me if at the time of death you're fully focused on me. So with this mystic power, it's great because you won't get caught by surprise. Die by surprise. Oh, died. Bum. My mind. Now I have to be born again. So now, okay, I'm ready, let's go, so then you can go. So it's a very interesting superpower. To die at your will. It also means that until you want to die, nobody can kill you. So you're kind of like invincible in that sense. Like Grandfather Bhishma had all these arrows, but he wouldn't die. Lots of pain, won't stop you from having pain. You couldn't even move around, you had to ask Arjuna to get him water. I mean, but you choose when you want to die. Okay, so that was a weird one, but it's very famous. Now this one's really funny too. This is just porn. This is just like, I don't know, it's like a mystic yoga porn. It's really weird that this is in the list, but I guess porn is porn. People like porn. They always have. So yeah, I super recommend you do not get close to pornography, but it's there in human nature, in human society since forever. So look at this. This is Devanam Saha Krida Anudarshanam. So this one's super creepy. So this one is the Devas. Idea is the demigods, the Devas, they have a really good time, right? They're just having a really good time. Now, devas aren't spiritually elevated. People get confused like that, like all the demigods. No, that's not it. It's like rich and powerful people on planet Earth are not spiritually elevated, right? You never think that. Okay, so it's the same thing. These guys are the rich and powerful of the universe. So that's it. They're just the rich and powerful. And rich and powerful people, they like having bling, they like having, they like wielding their power, and they like lots of sex, right? I mean, everybody likes to say, but they can get away, they can arrange for it better than people who don't have a lot of power and money, right? So they arrange for lots of sex. And what they do is, for one thing, it's a different culture. Demigod culture is completely different. You also get that in the Mahabharata. You can see where Arjuna is Indra's son, but it's like there's no rules. There's no like, oh, you can't have sex. Oh, you have to be married. No, there's nothing like that. It's a big free for all. So, they live millions of years. It's like, so this is like a different thing. They don't get pregnant without wanting to. And so it's kind of the general rule is it's just a free for all. Everybody can have sex with anyone. There's no like restrictions. There's no like, oh no, celibate. Nobody talks about being celibate. Nobody talks about monogamy. These things don't exist in demigod culture. So anyway, so one thing they have this whole class of beings called the Apsaras, who are there in the celestial realm, who are basically like courtesans, They're basically these beautiful women who sing and dance and are just kind of just there for, just to have fun, and the demigods can have sex with them, It's just like, they're into it as well. It's not that they're like under bondage or something. It's just like that's a birth. That's like a celestial species you can take birth in. As an apsara. So you're like it's a courtesan. It's like you're free for that stuff. And you'll see these apsaras. They come up a lot in the stories, because what you'll see is sometimes you have like a yogi on earth trying to get these powers, or you're trying to get even the big powers. And then the demigods get annoyed because they're like, oh, look, that guy's doing really well, you know? And if we don't do anything, that guy's going to be challenging us in power soon. And then we're going to have to deal with this guy. So they like curtailing these plans for mystic superpowers by earthly yogis. So then they will send down these apsaras. You have so many stories like this. So they'll send down these, these women are like super beautiful, like think of because everything in the celestial realm is 10,000 times superior than the earthly realm. So imagine like the most beautiful woman you can think of here, super sexy, beautiful, and then 10,000 times. So these so then they would send these women down. And then they would come like with their clothes kind of falling off, like, oh. And then the yogis would, completely lose their focus. They're like trying to be celibate for decades, they would completely lose it. And then they would just lose all their focus, their power, and they're like, they would like start from scratch or something. And then you have stories, of course, as well of like superpower yogis who would like gotten to the point where they knew that was a trick, and so they would try to burn these apsaras, with their power. Anyway, so it's very funny. So, but this, going back to this secondary superpower, this is a special point channel you get to have where you see the demigods having sex with the apsaras. It's like very creepy. So they have these fields. The demigods have these wonderful fields because you don't have to stick to rooms. You just like these wonderful gardens. Paradise means, gardens. So they have these wonderful gardens, and so, these demigods were also like super good looking, right? They're like amazingly good looking. So the demigods having sex with these apsaras. And you get to watch it. It's very strange. It's like, why would you even want that? But anyway, I guess some people, but I just think it's terrible. But anyway, so that's one of the demigods. So you get to do that. You're witnessing the pastimes between the demigods and the apsaras. Okay. Here they just put sporting, but obviously it's not like they're playing tennis or anything. Anyway, so you get to witness that. Okay, now, yata sankalpa samsiddhi. So whatever, and then the last one is completely executing one's determination. Whatever you want, like you want this done, this has to be done, you command, it gets done. The progress is unimpeded, perfect accomplishment, samsiddhi. So this is kind of like that Star Wars thing where they would, like, you will open the door for me. And then, like that, how's it go? I don't know how it goes. I'm not enough of a Star Wars fan to know these things, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, so they would command people to like, yes, and then they would do it. Just being able to command, your determination, giving orders, which are, whose fulfillment is unimpeded. So you have this power over people. And some people have a little bit of that here, right? You can see this. Some people have this power to like, command others and they do what they want, I'm thinking of Trump here, like they really like just controls all these people. It's like, why are you guys letting this guy control you? But he just manages, maybe he's got some of this from his karma. He's got a little bit of this sankalpa samsiddhi. He just like, because all these things happen, like why these things keep happening? He has this power to command over people. So anyway, that was super interesting, right? That was really good. So I hope you got that. You understood all these superpowers. These are the 10 mystic secondary superpowers. Okay. Now, verses 8 and 9. So, now, he's going to continue the list. So we had 8 primary, we had the 10 secondary, and then there's going to be like others. he's going to mention others. Like I told you, like in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, there's a whole bunch of others. So now there's like, these aren't even classified. These are just like little things, not even important. Somehow, I don't know why the whole like watching the demigods have sex was like, but anyway. So this is a little list here. To know, the power to know past, present, and future. Tolerance of heat, cold, and other dualities. Knowing the minds of others. Checking the influence, which means like withholding, being able to control, subdue the influence of fire, sun, water, poison, and so on. And remaining unconquered by others. These constitute 5 perfections of the mystic process of yoga and meditation. I'm simply listing these here according to their names and characteristics. Now please learn from me how specific mystic perfections arise from specific meditations and also of the particular process involved. So now Krishna says, look, there's these 5 as well. Now these 5 seem more interesting to me than some of the others of the 10 secondary, but somehow they were, put in this list here. So to know past, present, and future, now that seems like a superpower to me. Like that could really change things, right? So that is one of them. That comes up a lot. It's called Trikala Gya. So Trikala Gya, three, Kala, time, Gya, knowledge of the 3 times. What does that mean? It's a strange one. It's actually philosophically a difficult one. Because what does it mean to know the future? I mean, if we have free will, and so how can I know the future? How can I know what you will decide? How can I know what everyone's going to decide? It's like you'd have to know the future, you'd have to know how everyone is going to decide. One moment after another, for as long into the future as you want to see. So it's very difficult, but so, I'm not sure what that means exactly. It's like, is it in that Marvel Universe style where, you can see the different possibilities and which one seems more probable, and they're all like existing simultaneously, like a parallel universe thing. So maybe like the Doctor Strange, like, yeah, maybe this and maybe that, and maybe this, that, and this, that. And so these things could happen because if a person decides differently, then something changes, right? And these implications have all these ramifications. So I'm not sure about that. So, and of course, knowing the present, what does that really mean? I mean, what do you know about the present? I mean, can you know everyone's like bank PIN number all of a sudden? Or, what does that mean? Or do you just know, like, what do you know? Like, do you know all the maths and sciences, and do you know all the poems? Can you just like recite any poem? What does that mean? So it's I'm not sure we can take it too far. And again, the past as well, like the past is so vast. I think it's more of like a general sense of like having that wisdom, like as you get old, you kind of get a feel. If you become a specialist, we consult, you see like these talking heads, you get a specialist. And so you're probably sick of hearing these things about, you've seen like about the wars we're having, like Israel. Oh, so this guy comes on the program, he says, yes, because I think, well, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. If they do this, the way they're doing this, and this is going to happen. Or of course we have all our, climate specialists, and they're saying, look, we think the future is going to bring this, this, and this. So in that sense, they're seeing the future. So that kind of makes sense. They can't see all the details of the future. But they're like, basically, look, this is what happens if this, if that, if the other thing. And then, of course, if people do something about it, if they don't. But then on a more general level, we can say, yeah, in general, people don't act enough in climate change, so I think this is going to happen. It's going to be this effect. So, there's a little bit of that going on. So seeing the future in that sense, I think it's more like that. I think it's a more general thing. But anyway, Trikalagya. This one's really important, right? Advandvam. So being unaffected by dualities, such as heat and cold. So just, the word itself just means dualities. So like whatever is this or that, it doesn't affect you. Heat and cold, you know, and doesn't affect you. But what does that mean? Does that mean you don't feel it at all, or it doesn't bother you? Because actually that's all, you know, that's a yogic goal we all have and we all actually can attain. I've attained it, you know, everybody can, all my students, you know, it's something you will attain normally by practicing yoga, is this power to not become so affected by these dualities. Or Krishna's talking, matra sparshas tu kuntya. He says this is one of the first things Krishna teaches Arjuna. You know, like just don't worry about these things because they come and go like the seasons. And you have to learn to just tolerate them. So this ability to just like, yeah, these dualities, hot and cold, you have money, sickness, and you know, you're sick, you're not sick, it's hot, it's cold, it's nice, it's not, it's cloudy, it's sunny. Just don't worry about it too much. You know, so you become unaffected by it. But does it mean that you're actually unaffected? Like it's like you're put in a pot of boiling oil, like, no, I'm not feeling anything. No, it doesn't, you know, maybe it doesn't mean that. Okay, and maybe that's why, you know, it's like, this is like the 5, that's not, you know, tertiary powers here. Now this one, Chitta abhigyata. So this is knowing the minds of others. It's interesting. Now, Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra specifically says that you can't see the thoughts of others because the thought isn't a thing. So Patanjali says is you can't possibly actually see the things you're thinking. Like, I'm thinking these things, you're like, I'm reading. You know, you can't do that. Because it's not a thing itself, because or else there would be like an infinite loop of the thing being seen the thing, and the thing, like when you put 2 mirrors, you know, like you get that infinite loop. So, but this, you know, you can easily understand this as just being a wise person who can look at, you know, we all get that. And as you do yoga, you'll get that. I know I got it. It was really interesting. You have this ability, your mind is clear, you're more centered, you know, you're more in touch with God. So you really do have this, we would call intuition, but you just more of like, you just sensitivity. You know what people are thinking, you know, it doesn't always work. But you kind of like pick up, you know, what's on their mind. You know, so it's kind of like this, you kind of know what's on their mind. You pick that up a little bit. But of course you can take it to higher levels, but that's basically the idea. Now this one's really good. So this one is fire, sun, water, poison, and so on. And then you have pratishtambha, you can check their potency. So you can control so this would be actually being able to control. And there's some good stories like that, like yogis who can stick their face in fire, like, you know, one of our gurus in our lineage, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you know, there's this famous story of him chasing one of these gurus, one of these yogis with superpowers, was using his superpowers like to get like followers and have sex and all that stuff, like typical, you know, rotten guru stuff. And one of the things, and he saw it, and he you know, he was persecuting this yogi because, you know, he was a magistrate. So it wasn't that he was impressed, that he'd have no reason to lie about it. He was trying to get him he got him in jail. So what he did is, and he saw this yogi stick his face in an open fire. You know, like a little, just stick his face right in the fire. And nothing happened. So this power to contain fire. And sun, of course, and there's this great story. I said, where did I read that? In one of these yogic journals I was reading. But it was some academic, I don't know now, if you can. But anyway, the story is, and this is like documented, like they took pictures and everything. some famous mountain climbers. It was like well documented. So they were like in the mountains in the Himalayas, super cold, you know, it's like snow and ice, and you know, they're like, no. And then they see this yogi walking barefoot. They're like, what? You know, this is like, this guy's just walking through like the snow and ice barefoot. You know, don't try this at home. But, you know, he just had this power. It didn't bother him. So you have this, you have these stories of these yogis, you know, in snow and pow. You know, like the ice, the cold, not bothering them. Anyway, so that's quite a power. That's quite an interesting one. And lastly, remaining unconquered by others. So like nobody can influence you. So like, you know, you've got your barriers on, you know, nobody can mess around with you. Nobody's possessing me. Thank you very much. You know, I got my, we call this having your body closed. My body is closed. You cannot possess me. It's funny, one time I had this mystical guy visit me. I was in Brazil. There's lots of mysticism in Brazil. And this guy was a super mystic, very famous, and he had this system anyway. So he did my whole thing. He could read you, and he just like did this whole reading. But then like he said that I got like 100 on this like body closed marks. You know, he says like, it's amazing. You're completely shielded. I said, yeah, I've got no shield, Dave. Of course I'm shielded. So he said, no, you're completely shielded. nobody can attack you, penetrate you. You're completely shielded. I said, yes, thank you. So anyway, so I guess that would be that power. I guess that one Krishna gave me. So very interesting, isn't it? Very fun. But make sure you come back next week. Well, actually not next week. I'm thinking of giving a little break because it's Christmas. You guys don't want to like be watching this during Christmas break. So I might just skip a little bit, like give you guys a little break and come back in January. Okay, but come back next class, because Krishna says here, now I will start explaining to you how it works. So you can learn how to do them. It won't really work, but you can hear about how it works, at least in the next class. So that's it for now. Thank you very much. Have your rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.